going to drive that car in Canada, but you might eventually drive that car in the United States. Both countries apply almost the same standards for having a car that is energy efficient, for having a car that does not cause harm to air quality. So the principle of cooperation applies throughout the world and throughout virtually all aspects of the environment. Another principle, one more principle, public participation. This is the principle that was developing in the late 1960s with new laws that allowed for members of the public to have an opportunity to go to a public meeting or to submit written comments or even to have a peaceful protest before big decisions are made about the environment. For example, if we look at this wonderful university and we see all these trees out here, if the government of Thailand wants to cut down all those trees, or if we go to Canada and the government of Canada is going to cut down a huge number of trees, in both countries, the public has an opportunity to take part in discussing that decision before it's made. Before any tree is cut down, there will be a public meeting to discuss that. And at that public meeting, we get to go and we get to give our opinions. Do we want those trees to be cut down? Or maybe we go to that meeting and we say, all right, cutting trees can be actually very good, but do we have to cut that many trees? What if we cut only half of those trees and leave the other half there? The same in fisheries. What if we go out and look closely at the fisheries of Canada and we study those fisheries, and Canada is going to make a big decision about fisheries? Public participation allows for citizens of Canada to now go to a meeting and discuss what will happen to those fisheries. One really good example of that, let's use this example. Spain is a very important country in fisheries, and Spain got in the habit of coming right up to Canada, across the ocean, and taking a whole lot of fish very close to Canada's border. Canada protested that activity by Spain. And the protest was based on public participation. The Canadian citizens did not want to see another country taking fish so close to the border of Canada. It's a really good example of the public in Canada and all of the people who work in fisheries in Canada expressing their opinions, expressing their views. Now, with all those principles, look what you have learned. You now know so much about a modern foundation and a new way of thinking about the environment. Is there a way where we could express in just a few words almost everything that we've talked about? Is there a way that we could do that? Let's use 2 words, and those 2 words will help us see the entire picture that we're discussing. And what are those 2 words? Sustainable, S-U-S-T-A-I-N-A-B-L-E, sustainable development. Now, I think all of you have very likely had those words in your other classes. But just in case this is new to you, what is sustainable? What is sustainable? What does that word mean? Do you remember when we spoke earlier about all of the people who will live here in Thailand after we are gone, and all of the people in the world who will live after we are gone? If we are going to make decisions about the environment and think about them, we're considering what is sustainable, what will continue, what will endure, what will still remain after we are no longer here. Will the forests still be here? Will the fisheries still be here? Will there be clean air and clean water? Our goal is sustainability. Our goal is only use the resources we need for the present and leave resources for the future, for those who will come after us. Sustainability is the concept of balance. Do you know that word balance? Balance is looking at a situation and considering all the factors that apply. So with sustainability, we look at what we need for today. We need to cut down some trees. But we look at the future, we also leave trees for those that come after us. I would just suggest today, if there's any 2 words that can summarize what we've discussed so far, sustainable development. Development for today, while also considering impacts on future generations. Let's go to a very important event that comes 10 years after that big book I described. Remember the big book, Rachel Carson's book, is in 1962. Let's come now to 1972 and look at what happens in our story today of the environment. In Sweden, in 1972, is the first conference in the history of the world on the environment. That first conference is revolutionary. There are representatives from 113 countries. Biggest conference ever up until that time in the history of the world. And you have the North and the South. You have North America and South America. You have Europe. This conference is so important. You even have world leaders. From China, you have Zhou Enlai. This is a prestigious conference. first ever devoted to the environment. What happens at that conference? 113 nations agree to a new perspective on the environment. 113 nations agree the world must recognize protection of resources, air and water, protection of plants and animals, protection of oceans. And even in 1972, can you believe this, in Sweden? They were actually discussing climate change. And from that conference is a very important statement. The statement is called the Stockholm Declaration. Declaration is just another word for statement. The Stockholm Declaration is the agreement of all of those countries, 113 countries, to work together and find new ways to cooperate to protect the environment. From that conference, we see then the beginning of a new kind of global citizenship. And from 1972 on, we can use two words. We can use the word globalization, and we can use the word interdependence. Let's start with globalization because you've had that already. You know so much about it. I think every one of you could sit down and write an excellent definition of globalization. But let's just pause and make sure we all are thinking about that. With globalization, we see we are connected in new ways. We see we're connected with communications